There are moments in life when everything you know crumbles in a single breath. For Elena Thompson, that moment came on a Tuesday morning in March. 8 months after burying her husband. The knock at the door was sharp. Final. She opened it to find her brother-in-law standing there with 2 men in dark suits. Their faces blank, cold. "You've got until sundown," he said. "Take what you can carry. The house belongs to the family now." Elena stood frozen, as if the words hadn't fully landed yet. Behind her, 3 small faces peeked around the corner. Her children, 7, 5, and 3 years old. They didn't understand what was happening. But they felt it. The air in the room had shifted. "This was my husband's house," she whispered. "Your husband is dead," he replied. "And you're no longer family." The door closed. Elena stood in the hallway, trembling, as the world she'd known for 12 years slipped through her fingers. What do you do when everything is taken from you? When the people you trusted turn their backs? When you have 3 hungry mouths to feed and nowhere to go? You keep going. By sundown, Elena was walking down the dirt road leading away from the estate. A single suitcase in one hand. Her youngest daughter asleep on her shoulder. The other 2 trailing behind, quiet and confused. The sky was bruised with purple and gray. She didn't look back, but someone else did. From the shadows near the estate gate, a figure watched her leave. An older man, face weathered by time, eyes sharp as steel. He had been waiting for this moment. For decades. Elena walked for hours. Past the edge of town. Past the places she knew. Into the hills where the roads turned to gravel and the trees grew thick and wild. Her children cried. She had no answers. Her legs burned. Her arms ached from the weight of the sleeping child. But she couldn't stop. Because stopping meant giving up. And giving up meant letting them win. Night fell quickly. Long shadows stretched across the road. The mountain chill cut through her thin clothes. Her middle child, Ethan, tugged at her skirt. "Mommy, I'm hungry." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "I know, sweetheart. Soon." But she didn't know when soon would come. She had no money, no food, nothing but the clothes on her back and the 3 precious lives depending on her. Have you ever felt that kind of desperation? When every step feels pointless, but you keep walking anyway. When you don't know where you're going, but you know you can't go back. Then, just as the last light faded, she saw it. A house. No, a mansion. Perched on the hilltop like a forgotten memory. Windows boarded up. Walls cracked. Vines climbing the stone like fingers reclaiming what was theirs. It had been abandoned for nearly 50 years. But it was shelter. Elena pushed open the rusted gate and stepped inside. The gate groaned on ancient hinges. The sound echoed across the empty property like a warning. Or maybe an invitation. The path to the front door was overgrown with weeds. Broken statues flanked the entrance, their faces worn by time until unrecognizable. This place had once been grand. She could see it in the remnants of its glory. The tall columns. The carved details above the door. The wide windows now blinded with wood and dust. Someone had lived here, loved here, lost everything here, just like her. The front door was unlocked. It creaked open, revealing a vast hall shrouded in shadows. The air smelled of dust and decay. The floorboards groaned under her feet. But there were rooms, walls, a roof. It would have to be enough. Elena moved slowly through the rooms. Her children clung to her clothes, frightened by the strange sounds, the dark shapes in the corners. She found a smaller, more sheltered room. A fireplace. Some old furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts. "We'll stay here tonight," she said softly. She laid her children on the floor, covered them with her coat, and sat in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since her husband died, she let herself cry. Not just silent tears, but deep, choking sobs that shook her whole body. All the pain, fear, and anger she'd held for 8 months finally poured out. Her children slept, innocent of the weight she carried. She cried until there were no tears left. And then, in the quiet that followed, she made a promise. To her children, to herself, to the memory of her husband. She would survive, somehow, some way, because giving up wasn't an option. But she didn't know. She didn't know the house she'd chosen wasn't random. She didn't know her husband's death hadn't been an accident. She didn't know the man who'd watched her was standing outside at that very moment, looking through a broken window. Waiting. Henry stood in the darkness, gazing at the silhouette of the woman sitting alone in the room. He had waited 47 years for this moment. 47 years carrying secrets that burned like embers in his chest. 47 years watching a family build an empire on lies and blood. And now, finally, the missing piece had arrived. The innocent widow. The desperate mother. The only person who could finish what James had started. He turned and vanished into the trees. Tomorrow he would begin. Tomorrow he would give her the tools she needed. Because some secrets refuse to stay buried forever. Injustice, even when it takes generations, always finds a way. The moon rose over the abandoned mansion. Inside, a mother slept beside her children. Outside, an old man guarded the truth that would change everything. And in the shadows between them, the past and present finally began to collide. Elena woke to the sound of her children's laughter. It was the first time she'd heard it in months. She stumbled to the window and saw them in the overgrown garden, chasing each other through tall grass. For a moment, she almost smiled. Morning light streamed through the broken boards, casting golden patterns on the dusty floor. Her children looked so small in that vast, wild space. But the moment didn't last. Because when she turned back to the room, she saw it. A basket, sitting on the table that had been empty the night before. Bread, cheese, apples, a jug of milk. Her heart stopped. Someone had been inside. While they slept, Elena's blood ran cold. Her maternal instincts exploded into pure panic. She grabbed the nearest object, a broken chair leg, and moved through the house room by room, searching. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it in her ears. Every shadow was a threat. Every creak of the floorboards an intruder. But no one was there. Just silence. And that basket. Elena returned to the table, staring at the food as if it were a trap. Her stomach growled. Her children hadn't eaten properly in days. But what if it was poisoned? What if it was some cruel trick? Ethan appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Mommy, can we eat?" She looked at her son's thin face. Saw his hollow cheeks. Saw the hunger in his eyes. What choice did she have? "Yes," she whispered. "You can eat." She watched them devour the bread and cheese, each bite a mix of relief and fear in her heart. Whoever had left this, why? For 3 days, it continued. Every morning, something new appeared. Firewood neatly stacked by the fireplace. A folded blanket on the stairs. A pot of soup still warm on the old stove. Elena didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. She checked the rooms, obsessively, looked for signs of intrusion. But she never found anything. No footprints, no forced doors, nothing. It was as if a ghost was caring for them. A ghost with a purpose. At night, she stayed awake, listening to every sound. The wind in the trees. The creak of old wood. The rustle of leaves outside. Was she imagining things? Was there really someone out there, or was the loneliness playing tricks on her mind? On the 4th day, she decided to wait. She sent the children upstairs to play and hid in the shadows near the kitchen, clutching a rusted iron poker. Her hands shook, not from cold, but from adrenaline. Hours passed. The sun traced its path across the sky. Shadows grew long. Elena waited, every muscle tense, every sense on high alert. Then, just as the sun began to set, she heard it. The soft creak of the back door. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. She gripped the poker tighter, her heart hammering against her ribs. Have you ever felt that moment before a confrontation? When your body is primed to fight or flee, but your mind is still processing whether you're the hunter or the prey. A figure stepped into the dim light. An old man, 70, maybe older, gray beard, worn coat, eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 100 lives. He saw her immediately. Put that down, he said calmly. I'm not here to hurt you. Elena didn't move. The poker stayed raised, trembling slightly in her hands. Who are you? She demanded. Why are you doing this? The man set a cloth-wrapped bundle on the floor, more food, and looked at her with something that might have been sorrow. My name is Henry, he said. And I've been waiting for you. Waiting for me. I don't even know you. No, he said. But I knew your husband. The words hit her like a punch to the chest. The poker slipped from her hands, clanging against the floor in a metallic echo that rang through the empty room. You knew James. Henry nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. I worked for his family. For 47 years. Watched him grow up. Watched him marry you. Watched him try to be a good man in a family that had forgotten what goodness meant. Elena's hands began to shake. What are you talking about? Henry's jaw tightened. He looked toward the window, as if seeing something beyond the present, something buried in the past. Your husband didn't die in an accident, Elena. He was murdered. Because he discovered the truth. The room seemed to tilt. Elena felt her legs weaken. She leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. What truth? Henry took a step closer, his voice low and heavy as stone. The fortune his family built. The properties, the businesses, the power, all of it was stolen. Built on lies, betrayal, and blood. James found documents, proof. He was going to expose them. Elena felt the world spinning around her. And they killed him for it. They made it look like a car accident, Henry said, his voice cracking with emotion. But I was there. I saw what happened. The brakes were tampered with. The curve he always took carefully. That night, the car didn't respond. He never had a chance. Tears began rolling down Elena's face. You saw. And you did nothing. The pain on Henry's face was palpable. I tried to warn him sooner, he whispered. But it was too late. And afterward I was afraid. Afraid they'd kill me too. Afraid everything James had uncovered would die with me. So I waited. Carried that truth for 8 months, waiting for the right moment. Why didn't you go to the police? Henry's laugh was bitter, a dry, humorless sound. The police. Half of them are in the Harrington family's pocket. The courts, the judges, the politicians. They own this town, Elena. Always have. You think anyone would have listened to me? An old butler against one of the most powerful families in the region. She sank into a chair, her mind racing. Memories flooded back. James coming home late, worried. Whispered phone calls. The tension he carried in his shoulders in the weeks before his death. She'd thought it was work stress. It had been fear. So why are you here? She finally asked. Why help me? Henry looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. Because James trusted you. Because you're the only one left who can finish what he started. And because those kids upstairs deserve to know their father didn't die for nothing. Elena stared at him, tears flowing freely now. I don't know how to fight them. I have nothing. No money. No power. I'm just. You're stronger than you think, Henry interrupted. And you're not alone. He reached into his coat and pulled out a yellowed, folded envelope. This house, he said, belonged to the man the Harrington family destroyed 50 years ago. A man who was once their partner. They framed him, stole his fortune, and left him to die in disgrace. Before he passed, he gave me these documents. Proof of everything. I've kept them hidden all this time. Elena took the envelope with trembling hands. The paper was thick, old. She could feel the weight of what was inside. Not just paper. History. Truth. Justice delayed. Why give it to me now? Because the family threw you out, Henry said. Made you desperate. And desperate people have nothing left to lose. He turned toward the door, then paused. You have a choice, Elena. You can run, disappear, protect your children and never look back. Or you can fight, expose the truth, make them pay for what they did. He looked at her one last time. But whatever you choose, choose quickly. Because they're watching, and they don't leave loose ends. Then he was gone. Elena sat in the growing darkness, staring at the envelope in her hands. Wondering if she had the courage to open it. Wondering if she had the strength to do what needed to be done. Wondering if a mother with 3 small children could really bring down an empire. From upstairs, she heard her children's laughter. Innocent, trusting, loved. She thought of James, his gentle smile, his strong hands, how he always made her feel safe. And then she thought of how he had died. Alone, afraid, knowing the truth but unable to tell it. Her hands stopped shaking. She opened the envelope, and began to read. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat at the table with a single candle burning, the documents spread out before her like pieces of a shattered life. Bank records, contracts, photographs, letters in her husband's handwriting, all pointing to the same horrible truth. James had been murdered because he discovered the Harrington Empire was built on theft, fraud, and violence. And now, she held the evidence that could destroy them. But at what cost? Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but she couldn't stop reading. Each page revealed another layer of corruption. Bribes to public officials, forged property deeds, veiled threats turned into brutal actions. And at the center of it all, a name she knew well. Nathan Harrington, her brother-in-law, the man who had knocked on her door and thrown her out. The man who had ordered his own brother's death. Bile rose in her throat. She thought of her children sleeping upstairs. Innocent, vulnerable. If she went forward, the family would retaliate. They had money, power, influence. They could take everything from her, including her children. But if she stayed silent, her husband's death would mean nothing. The question burned in her chest, cutting deeper than any knife. What would you do when the people who should protect you become the ones you fear most? When the system meant to deliver justice is bought and paid for? When all you have is the truth and a fragile hope that someone, somewhere, will listen? Elena closed her eyes and saw James's face. His kind smile. The way he looked at their children with so much love. The way he had died. Alone. Betrayed by his own blood. She opened her eyes. And made her choice. The next morning, she packed the documents into a worn leather bag and walked into town with her children. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. Her kids held her hands, sensing the tension in every step. Henry was waiting for her at the church. He stood in the shadows near the side entrance, his face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. She nodded, her jaw set. "I'm sure." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Then let's go. There's someone you need to meet." Together, they went to the outskirts of town, to a small apartment above a coffee shop. Henry knocked in a specific pattern, 3 quick raps, a pause, 2 slow ones. The door opened. A woman stood there, maybe in her mid-40s, with sharp, watchful eyes that sized Elena up instantly. "Henry," she said, "you finally decided to show up. Sarah, this is Elena. The widow I told you about." Sarah's eyes softened slightly. "Come in, quick." The apartment was small but organized. Walls covered in newspaper clippings, photos, maps. A table piled with files and a laptop. Sarah was an investigative journalist from a bigger city. A woman who had built her career exposing corruption in places no one else dared look. When she saw the documents, her eyes widened. She put on reading glasses and began flipping through the pages, her breathing quickening with each revelation. This is explosive," Sarah whispered. "If this goes public, it'll destroy them completely." "Good," Elena said, her voice steady. Sarah looked at her with newfound respect. "You understand the risk. These people won't just accept it. They'll fight. They'll threaten. They might even try to hurt you." Elena thought of James. How brave he had been to face them alone. Now it was her turn. "I understand," she said. "But I can't let them get away with it. I can't let his death mean nothing." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then let's do this right. We'll build a case so airtight even their lawyers can't break it." Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah worked in secret. Elena stayed in the apartment with her children, out of sight. Henry came and went, bringing supplies, making sure they were safe. Sarah fact-checked obsessively, verified sources, cross-referenced every document, every claim, every name. She made calls to forensic accountants, reached out to legal experts, contacted federal authorities not under the Harrington family's influence. Elena watched her work with something close to awe. This woman's absolute determination, her refusal to let the truth stay buried. "Why are you doing this?" Elena asked one night. Sarah stopped typing and looked at her. "Because I lost my father to people like them," she said quietly. Powerful men who thought they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. No one fought for him. No one exposed the truth. So I decided I'd fight for everyone else. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Sarah said. "Thank me when we're done." And then, on a cold April morning, the story broke. Front page of the national newspaper. Headline on every news channel. "Decades of fraud, theft, and murder, the dark legacy of the Harrington Empire." Elena watched from the apartment window as the world exploded. TV cameras swarmed the family. Estates. Reporters shouted questions. Police cars arrived with sirens blaring. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Arrests. Investigations. Assets frozen. Bank accounts seized. Nathan Harrington was handcuffed live on television, shouting about injustice as he was led away. Other family members scrambled to hide. Lawyers worked frantically to contain the damage. But it was too late. The truth had been unleashed. And like a wildfire, it spread faster than anyone could contain. Elena held her children as they watched. Ethan, 7 years old, asked, "Mommy, are those the bad men who made Daddy go away?" She kissed the top of his head. "Yes, sweetheart, but they can't hurt anyone anymore." In the weeks that followed, more truths came to light. Witnesses too afraid to speak years ago now stepped forward. Employees, former business partners, people who had been threatened into silence. The case against the Harrington family grew from financial crimes to something far darker. Murder, extortion, witness intimidation, and at the center of it all, James's murder. A mechanic came forward. He had been forced to tamper with the brakes. He had lived with the guilt for 8 months. His testimony sealed Nathan's fate. The family that had ruled the town for generations collapsed in days. Their fortune, built on so many people's suffering, was finally dismantled. Elena watched it all unfold from the safety of the old mansion on the hill. She had returned there after the arrests began. It felt safer, more certain, as if the house knew it had played its part in bringing justice. Henry stood beside her, quiet and steady. "You did it," he said softly. Elena shook her head. "We did it." He smiled. A small, sad smile. James would be proud. Tears filled her eyes. "I hope so." In the months that followed, restitution was made. Families harmed 50 years ago were compensated. The stolen fortune was returned. And Elena, the widow who had been thrown out with nothing, received back what was rightfully hers. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the truth, the knowledge that her husband hadn't died in vain. That his courage, his integrity, had meant something. And that even in the darkest moments, when all seems lost, there are people willing to stand beside you and fight. On a quiet June evening, Elena stood on the mansion's porch, watching the sun set over the hills. Her children were inside, laughing and safe. Henry had moved into the caretaker's cottage on the property. Said he was too old to go anywhere else. Sarah visited sometimes, always bringing stories of new investigations, new injustices she was exposing. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Peace. Not because the battle was over, but because she had fought it. And won. She thought of James, wondered if he could see her now, and whispered to the wind, "I finished what you started." The stars began to appear, one by one, against the darkening sky. And somewhere, in the silent spaces between heartbeats, justice smiled. Because some truths refuse to stay buried. Some courage refuses to be broken. And some love never dies. Elena looked down at her hands. Hands that had held her hungry children. Hands that had trembled with fear. Hands that had opened that envelope and changed everything. Hands that could finally rest. Because the journey was over. And a new beginning had arrived.